Is Israel unfairly singled out? Yes. In 2019, the US donated $3.8 billion to Israel, more than any other country except Afghanistan. Since 1985, the US has donated, on average, $3 billion a year to Israel. Over the past 5 decades, the US has vetoed at least 53 UN Security Council resolutions critical of Israel. Over just the past 3 decades, the US has vetoed 18 resolutions critical of Israel at the UN Security Council. U.S. police departments regularly collaborate with Israeli police departments on worst practices like racial profiling, deportation and detention, and attacks on human rights defenders. So, why does the U.S. single out Israel with so much political and military support? Before we answer that question, I want to address a deeper question, which is, what does it mean to single out Israel? Can we establish some criteria by which criticism of Israel or anything else is legitimate and when it's unfair singling out? Because pro-Israel enthusiasts repeat this talking point whenever Israel is criticized. We just saw this happen again after Ben & Jerry's decided to cause World War III by no longer selling ice cream in Ma'ale Adumim in 2023. And it is difficult to underestimate just how absolutely enraged Israelis were at this decision. It was, quote, a new form of terrorism, according to Israel's president, Isaac Herzog. That's right, those ice cream terrorists. What are we going to see next from these people? Caramel vanilla infused with general purpose cluster bombs? The best part of waking up is cookie dough mixed with ammonium nitrate in your cup. Yo, YouTube, that was a joke. Bombs are bad, terrorism is bad. Please don't demonetize this video. In all seriousness though, Yair Netanyahu asked on Twitter, how come Ben & Jerry's divested from Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank, but not from northern Cyprus or Iraqi Kurdistan? And it's an argument we hear over and over again. The world, quote unquote, unfairly singles out Israel when there are much worse human rights violators. Burma, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Libya, North Korea, Sudan. Sure, the 14-year siege on Gaza has left 90% of people without safe drinking water, and 20% of children are now facing stunted growth owing to malnutrition, but I suppose that's not the single most evil thing a government is doing to millions of people. But now you are engaging in the tried and true strategy of whataboutism, which is a strategy near and dear to the hearts and minds of the Afghanistan-based Taliban, whose spokesperson was recently asked in August 2021, do you support freedom of speech? And he said, well, what about Facebook? They're censoring free speech too. And so pro-Israel people absolutely love whataboutism for the same reason that the Taliban loves whataboutism, because no matter what human rights violations you are committing, unless you are the worst government in the world, you can always just say someone's worse, focus on them. In other words, this argument can be leveled against 99% of human rights violators, 99% of war criminals, and 99% of torturers. And then if you went to the worst 1%, you know what they would tell you? You should have focused on the worst 0.1%. And an argument that can counter 99.9% of all other arguments has a technical name in philosophy. It's called a stupid, shitty fucking argument. And so, to Yair Netanyahu's tweet, why didn't Ben & Jerry's also divest from Kurdistan or northern Cyprus? My only question is, why stop there? Why not throw in Western Sahara, Nagorno-Karabakh, South Ossetia? How about all countries imposing blockades, imprisoning thousands of children, denying millions of people the right to vote? Let's throw in those countries too. How about every country denying a people the right to wave a flag? Whataboutism leads to more whataboutism. And this is the first reason to be skeptical of anyone who starts a sentence with, but what about? Next point. A world where we all had to criticize things in proportion to how shitty they are is a bad world to live in. We'd lose our ability to develop our own passions and interests. You're telling me I can't criticize Rudy Gobert for slobbering his greasy claws all over the mic? You fucking idiot, Rudy. The pandemic is like 80% your fault. And that's a legitimate thing to say, even if children are starving somewhere. And part of what is beautiful about the world we live in is we have this ability to choose our own destiny, to pursue our own interests, whatever those are. And I don't think it's a good thing if our entire species were all programmed to calibrate our criticism and political action according to some kind of comparative human rights violations database. Next point, singling out a bad actor is often a gateway to catching other bad actors and disincentivizing future bad actors. Just think about the Me Too movement. As soon as one person spoke up, lots of people spoke up. Divestment campaigns are similar. Israel divestment campaigns lead to fossil fuel divestment campaigns, which lead to private prison divestment campaigns, which is why, by the way, pro-Palestine BDS supporters cite the boycott and divestment campaigns against South African apartheid in the 80s and 90s. It's why those who support a boycott of, say, Turkey cite BDS. Actually, I don't know if they support BDS, but they should. The point being that singling out a bad actor oftentimes leads us all to focus on other bad actors. It's a chain reaction. It has a domino effect. And so if you actually cared Israel, and yet you're Netanyahu, about solving the problem in Iraqi Kurdistan, or in Northern Cyprus, or in Western Sahara, what you would do is you would support BDS, because that would then lead to BDS movements in Western Sahara and in Northern Cyprus and in Iraqi Kurdistan. And so if you ever hear the argument, Israel is singled out for unfairly for committing human rights violations, hopefully now you have some counter arguments in your toolkit, in your Hasbara toolkit, to deal with those points. Thank you so much for tuning in and for subscribing to the channel. Until next time.